The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, casting golden rays across the breakfast table where the Wales family gathered. Princess Charlotte sat between her brothers, carefully spreading jam on her toast while listening to the adults talk. Her grandmother's antique watch lay on the sideboard, its delicate gold case catching the light. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, picked up the timepiece with gentle hands. The watch had belonged to Queen Elizabeth II and held decades of royal history within its elegant frame. It was more than jewelry. It represented tradition, family bonds, and memories that stretched back generations. "We're planning something special for the upcoming charity gala," Catherine explained to William. "The Royal Collection curator suggested we auction some pieces to raise funds for the Children's Hospital wing." Charlotte's ears perked up at this conversation. She set down her toast and watched her mother handle the beautiful watch. The young princess had always admired that particular piece. Her great-grandmother had worn it on numerous occasions, and Charlotte remembered seeing it on her wrist during their tea times together. William nodded thoughtfully as he reviewed the list of items being considered for the auction. "These are all magnificent pieces. The funds raised will make a real difference to those children who need medical care." Charlotte remained quiet, but her mind was racing. She understood the importance of charity. Her parents had taught her and her brothers about helping others less fortunate. They often visited hospitals and community centers, and she had seen firsthand how happy people became when they received support. However, something about including her great-grandmother's watch in the auction troubled her deeply. This wasn't just any piece of jewelry from the royal vaults. This specific watch carried personal memories that couldn't be replaced with money, no matter how good the cause might be. The little princess thought back to the times she spent with her great-grandmother. She remembered the Queen's warm smile, her gentle voice, and the way sunlight would dance off that gold watch as she poured tea or reached for a biscuit. Those moments felt sacred to Charlotte, like precious treasures locked in her heart. As breakfast continued, Charlotte observed her parents discussing logistics for the gala. They talked about guest lists, auction procedures, and expected donations. Everyone seemed excited about the event and the good it would accomplish. The watch sat innocently on the sideboard, unaware it might soon leave the family forever. Charlotte felt a knot forming in her stomach. She wanted to speak up to tell her parents how she felt, but the words stuck in her throat. She was still young, and these were adult decisions about important matters. What if her feelings seemed silly or selfish compared to helping sick children? George, her older brother, chatted about his upcoming football match while little Louis made faces at his breakfast. They seemed unbothered by the conversation about the auction. Perhaps they didn't understand the significance of that particular watch, or maybe they simply hadn't formed the same connection to it that Charlotte had. The young princess pushed her plate away, her appetite fading. She knew she needed to find the courage to express what was in her heart. The watch represented more than gold and craftsmanship. It was a tangible link to her great-grandmother, a woman she had loved dearly and still missed every single day. Catherine noticed Charlotte's suddenly quiet demeanor. "Darling, you've barely touched your breakfast. Are you feeling all right?" Charlotte looked up at her mother's concerned face. This was her moment. She could either stay silent and watch the watch disappear into a stranger's collection, or she could find her voice and speak the truth that weighed so heavily on her young heart. "Mummy," she began softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need to talk to you about something important." The breakfast table grew quiet. William set down his newspaper, and even her brothers stopped their chatter. All eyes turned to Charlotte, and suddenly she felt very small and very nervous. But she thought of her great-grandmother, of the strength and dignity the Queen had always shown, and Charlotte found courage she didn't know she possessed. "It's about the watch," she continued, her voice growing slightly stronger. "Great-Granny's special watch." Catherine and William exchanged glances, sensing this was more significant than a simple childhood request. They gave Charlotte their full attention, waiting to hear what their daughter needed to say. The morning light continued to stream through the windows, and in that moment, the antique timepiece seemed to glow with an almost magical quality, as if it too was waiting to hear what would happen next in this unfolding family moment. Catherine moved her chair closer to Charlotte and took her daughter's small hand in hers. The warmth of her mother's touch gave Charlotte the confidence to continue with what she needed to say. William leaned forward, his expression gentle and encouraging. What about the watch, sweetheart? Catherine asked softly, brushing a strand of hair from Charlotte's face. Charlotte took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. She wanted to explain herself properly, to make her parents understand without sounding like she didn't care about the sick children who needed help. I know the charity is really important, Charlotte began, choosing her words carefully, and I want to help those children who are in the hospital. But Great Granny's watch is special in a different way. William set aside the auction papers completely now, giving his daughter his undivided attention. He could see this wasn't a simple case of a child wanting to keep a pretty object. Something deeper was at work here. Charlotte continued, her words coming faster now as her emotions rose to the surface. When I was little, I used to sit with Great Granny during tea time. She would let me listen to the watch tick when she held me. She told me it was like a heartbeat, steady and constant, just like family love. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes as she listened to her daughter recall these precious memories. She had never realized Charlotte had formed such a deep connection to that specific piece. Every time Great Granny wore that watch, she would tell me stories, Charlotte went on, her own eyes beginning to shimmer with unshed tears. Stories about when Daddy was little, stories about the family, stories about being brave and kind. The watch was always there on her wrist like it was part of all those special moments. George, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. I remember that too. Great Granny's watch was always ticking during our visits. Even young Louis seemed to understand something important was happening. He reached across the table and patted Charlotte's arm clumsily, his way of offering comfort. Charlotte looked directly at her father now. Daddy, I know we have lots of beautiful things in the family collection, but this watch isn't just beautiful. It's like having a piece of Great Granny still with us. When I look at it, I can almost hear her voice again. William felt his own emotions stirring. His grandmother had been such an important figure in his life, and her passing had left a void that nothing could truly fill. He hadn't considered how the younger generation might be processing their own grief and holding on to their own memories of her. If we sell the watch, Charlotte said, her voice cracking slightly, it will go away forever. A stranger will own it. They won't know about the tea times or the stories or how Great Granny's laugh sounded when she was really happy. They'll just see a pretty old watch. Catherine squeezed Charlotte's hand gently. You're absolutely right, darling. Those memories are irreplaceable. Charlotte felt encouraged by her mother's words but pressed on, wanting to make sure she fully explained her heart. I'm not saying we shouldn't help the sick children. We should definitely help them. But maybe we could auction something else, something that doesn't hold so many family memories. William reached across the table and placed his hand over his daughter's. Charlotte, what you're saying makes perfect sense. That watch isn't just an object. It's a keeper of memories and family history. Charlotte felt relief flooding through her, but she still had more to say. Sometimes I go and look at the watch when I'm missing Great Granny. It makes me feel close to her again. If it's gone, I won't have that anymore. The young princess paused, then added something that showed wisdom beyond her years. Great Granny always taught us about duty and helping others. But she also taught us about family and keeping our bond strong. I think she would want us to help the children, but maybe not by giving away something that connects us to her. Catherine looked at William, and in that silent exchange between parents, a decision was forming. They had always tried to teach their children the importance of speaking up for what they believed in, of having courage in their convictions. Charlotte was demonstrating exactly those qualities right now. You know what, Charlotte? William said, his voice full of pride and love. You're showing incredible maturity by expressing your feelings so clearly. It takes courage to speak up, especially about something this important to you. Charlotte wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. I was scared you'd think I was being selfish. The sick children need help more than I need a watch. Catherine shook her head firmly. You're not being selfish at all, my darling. You're being honest about your feelings, and you're helping us understand something we hadn't fully considered. Preserving family memories and helping others don't have to be in conflict with each other. The breakfast room had transformed from a simple morning meal setting into a space where something important was happening. A young girl was finding her voice, and her parents were truly listening. The antique watch continued to rest on the sideboard, but now its fate hung in a different balance than it had just minutes before. William stood up from the table and walked to the sideboard where the watch rested. He picked it up carefully, feeling its familiar weight in his palm. The gold case was warm from the morning sunlight, and for a moment, He was transported back to his own childhood memories of his grandmother wearing this very piece. "You know, Charlotte," William said, turning back to face his family, "when I was about your age, my grandmother gave me something that had belonged to my mother. She explained to me that objects can carry love across time, connecting us to people we've lost." Charlotte listened intently as her father shared this personal memory. She had heard stories about her late grandmother Diana, but had never thought about how her father must feel having lost his mother when he was so young. "That gift meant everything to me," William continued, walking back to the table with the watch still in his hand. "It wasn't the most valuable thing in the world, but it was priceless to me because of what it represented. I understand exactly how you feel about this watch." Catherine added her own thoughts to the conversation. "When we're planning events and making decisions, sometimes we focus so much on the practical aspects that we forget about the emotional importance of things. You've reminded us of something very valuable today, Charlotte." George, who had been watching his sister with newfound respect, chimed in. "Charlotte's right, you know. Great-Granny would probably rather we kept something of hers in the family than sold it, even for a good cause." William smiled at his eldest son.
"That's very thoughtful, George."
"You're both showing real consideration for what matters most." Charlotte felt a wave of gratitude toward her brother for supporting her. Sometimes siblings could be annoying, but in important moments like this, they stood together. "So what do we do?" Charlotte asked hopefully. "Can we keep the watch and still help the sick children?" William set the watch down on the table where everyone could see it. "That's exactly what we need to figure out. We're not going to rush this decision. Let's think together about how we can achieve both goals." Catherine pulled out her phone and started scrolling through some notes. "Actually, we have quite a few items on the auction list. Let me look at what else is included." As Catherine reviewed the list, Charlotte felt her heart beating fast with hope. She hadn't expected her parents to take her concerns so seriously, but here they were, actively looking for a solution that would honor both her feelings and their charitable commitments. "There are several pieces here that are valuable, but don't carry the same personal significance," Catherine observed, studying the screen. "We have some commemorative items, some pieces that were gifts from foreign dignitaries, and some items from the general royal collection." William looked over Catherine's shoulder at the list. "We could potentially replace the watch with one or two other items of similar value. The auction would still raise the needed funds for the hospital wing." Charlotte's eyes lit up with hope, but she wanted to make sure they weren't compromising the charity just because of her feelings.
Would that really work?
Would the auction still make enough money for the sick children? Her concern for others, even while advocating for what mattered to her personally, made both her parents incredibly proud. Here was their daughter thinking not just about her own wishes but about the bigger picture. "Yes, sweetheart," Catherine assured her. "The goal is to raise a certain amount of money, not to auction specific items. As long as we can meet that goal, the hospital will get the support they need." William added, "In fact, some of the other pieces might actually appeal more to collectors. The watch is precious to us because of its personal history, but from a purely monetary standpoint, other items might generate equal or even greater interest at auction." Charlotte felt relief washing over her like a cool wave on a hot day. "So the children will still get help and we can keep Great-Granny's watch?" "It's looking that way," William confirmed with a warm smile. "But this conversation isn't over yet. I want to bring the collection curator in on this discussion. We need to make sure we're making the best decisions for everyone involved." George raised his hand like he was in school, making everyone chuckle. "Can I say something?" "Of course," Catherine encouraged him. "Maybe we could also think of other ways to raise money," George suggested. "Like what if we did a sponsored run or something? Then we could raise even more money and definitely keep Great-Granny's things in the family." William ruffled his son's hair affectionately. "That's an excellent idea, George. We could organize additional fundraising activities that don't involve parting with family heirlooms at all." Charlotte beamed at her brother, grateful for his creative thinking. Louis, not wanting to be left out, announced loudly, "I can do a run." "I'm very fast." The family laughed together. The tension that had hung in the air earlier completely dissolved. What had started as a difficult conversation had transformed into a collaborative family problem-solving session. Catherine made some notes on her phone. "I'm going to set up a meeting with the curator and the charity event organizers for this afternoon. We'll review all our options and come up with a plan that works for everyone." Charlotte felt a huge weight lift from her shoulders. She'd been so worried about speaking up, afraid her feelings might not matter or might cause problems. Instead, her honesty had opened up an important family discussion and reminded everyone about what truly mattered. That afternoon, the Wales family gathered in William's study at Kensington Palace. The room smelled of old books and furniture polish, creating an atmosphere of quiet dignity. Charlotte sat in one of the comfortable chairs, her legs swinging slightly as they didn't quite reach the floor. She felt nervous but also strangely confident after the morning's breakthrough. The Royal Collection curator, Mrs. Margaret Hartley, arrived promptly at 2 o'clock. She was an older woman with kind eyes and decades of experience managing the royal family's treasures. She had known these pieces intimately, understanding not just their monetary worth, but their historical and emotional significance. "Your Royal Highnesses," Mrs. Hartley greeted them formally, before her expression softened into a genuine smile. "And hello to you, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis." Catherine offered Mrs. Hartley tea, and they settled into a comfortable arrangement around William's desk. The antique watch sat in the center of the desk, like a witness to the proceedings. "Mrs. Hartley," William began, "we've asked you here because we need to reconsider some items on the charity auction list. Specifically, my grandmother's personal watch." Mrs. Hartley nodded thoughtfully, glancing at the timepiece. "The Queen's watch. Yes, it's one of the pieces I recommended for the auction, due to its expected high value at sale." Charlotte shifted in her seat, and Catherine placed a reassuring hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Go ahead, Charlotte. Tell Mrs. Hartley what you shared with us this morning." Taking a deep breath, Charlotte explained her feelings about the watch to the curator. She spoke about her memories with her great-grandmother, about the stories in the tea times, about how the watch represented something irreplaceable. As she talked, Mrs. Hartley's expression shifted from professional interest to genuine understanding. "Princess Charlotte," Mrs. Hartley said when Charlotte finished, "what you've just described is precisely why I love my work. These aren't just objects. They're memory keepers, story holders, and connection points across generations." Charlotte felt validated by the curator's words. Here was someone who truly understood. Mrs. Hartley continued, "When I compiled the auction list, I focused primarily on market value and appeal to collectors. I didn't fully consider the personal attachments family members might have to specific pieces. That was an oversight on my part." "It wasn't an oversight," William assured her. "You were doing exactly what we asked you to do. But Charlotte has helped us see this from a different perspective." The curator pulled out her tablet and brought up the complete auction inventory. "Let me show you the alternatives we have available. We need to raise approximately £500,000 for the new children's hospital wing. The watch would likely fetch around 70 to 80,000 at auction." Charlotte's eyes widened at the amount. She hadn't realized the watch was worth so much money. For a moment, she questioned whether her emotional attachment was more important than that substantial sum that could help so many children. Sensing her daughter's doubt, Catherine spoke up. "Charlotte, don't second-guess yourself. What you're feeling is valid, and we're going to find a solution that honors both your feelings and our commitment to the charity." Mrs. Hartley scrolled through her tablet, studying various items. "Actually, I have several suggestions that might work even better than the original plan. There's a diamond and sapphire brooch that was a gift from a visiting head of state in the 1980s. Beautiful piece, no personal family history attached, and it would likely attract significant bidding due to its size and quality." William leaned forward to look at the image on the tablet. "I remember seeing that piece in the vault. It's stunning." "There's also a set of ceremonial medals from various Commonwealth nations," Mrs. Hartley continued. "Historically interesting, valuable to collectors, but again, no personal family significance. And we have a painting that was commissioned for a state visit, which could appeal to art collectors." George, who had been quietly listening, asked, "Would those things together be worth as much as Great-Granny's watch?" Mrs. Hartley smiled at the young prince's practical question. Actually, collectively, they would likely exceed the watch's value. The brooch alone might fetch £100,000 or more. Charlotte perked up at this news. "So we could help the children even more by auctioning those things instead?" "Precisely," Mrs. Hartley confirmed. "And I have another suggestion. What if we also included a special royal experience in the auction? Perhaps a private tea at one of the palaces or a tour with historical commentary. These experiences often generate enormous bids because they're truly once-in-a-lifetime opportunities." Catherine's eyes lit up at this idea. "That's brilliant, Mrs. Hartley. We could offer an afternoon tea experience that doesn't require us to part with any physical items at all. William was nodding enthusiastically. People would bid generously for that kind of access. It's personal, memorable, and costs us nothing in terms of family heirlooms. Charlotte felt joy bubbling up inside her. Not only could they keep her great-grandmother's watch, but they might actually raise more money for the sick children than they had originally planned. It seemed almost too good to be true. "There's one more thing I'd like to suggest," Mrs. Hartley said, looking at Charlotte with particular warmth. "Princess Charlotte, your great-grandmother was known for her wisdom in preserving family heritage while also serving the public good. What you did today by speaking up, that's exactly the kind of thoughtful leadership she would have been proud of." Charlotte felt tears spring to her eyes again. But these were happy tears. The curator's words meant so much to her, connecting her actions to her great-grandmother's values. Over the next few days, the revised auction plan took shape. Charlotte watched with fascination as her parents and Mrs. Hartley worked together to create something even better than the original concept. The young princess realized that speaking up hadn't just saved one watch. It had sparked a completely new approach to the charity event. Catherine invited Charlotte to join her in meetings with the event planners, believing her daughter deserved to see how her courage had created positive change. The charity gala organizers were thrilled with the new direction, especially the idea of including unique royal experiences alongside physical items. "The experiences will generate media attention," one organizer explained excitedly. "People love the idea of winning time with the royal family. This could make our event one of the most talked about charity auctions of the year." Charlotte sat quietly in these meetings, absorbing everything. She learned about marketing strategies, donor psychology, and the complex logistics of organizing major fundraising events. Her parents encouraged her questions, treating her as a valued contributor rather than just a child who had caused a change of plans. One evening, William found Charlotte in the drawing room, carefully examining her great-grandmother's watch. She held it gently, as if it were made of butterfly wings rather than sturdy gold. "Penny, for your thoughts?" William asked, settling into the chair beside her. Charlotte looked up at her father. "I was thinking about Great-Granny and wondering if she would be happy with what we decided." William considered the question seriously. "I think she would be very happy, not just about keeping the watch in the family, but about how you handled the situation." "What do you mean?" Charlotte asked. "Well," William explained, "you could have thrown a tantrum or demanded we do things your way. Instead, you expressed your feelings calmly. You listened to others, and you remained concerned about the charity even while advocating for what mattered to you." "That's real leadership, Charlotte." Charlotte felt a warm glow at her father's words. "I was scared to say anything at first. I thought maybe my feelings weren't important enough." "Your feelings are always important," William assured her. "One of the hardest lessons to learn in life is when to speak up and how to do it effectively." "You managed both beautifully." Charlotte traced the watch's delicate engraving with her finger. Mrs. Hartley said Great-Granny was good at balancing family and duty. "I want to be like that too." William felt his heart swell with pride. "You're already showing those qualities and you're still so young. Imagine the person you'll become as you grow up." They sat together in comfortable silence for a moment. 3 generations connected through a piece of gold and craftsmanship that represented so much more than the sum of its parts. "Daddy," Charlotte said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Always. When you miss Great-Granny, what do you do?" William thought carefully about his answer. "I think about the lessons she taught me. I try to make decisions that would make her proud. And sometimes I look at things that remind me of her, just like you're doing right now with that watch." Charlotte nodded, understanding. "It helps, doesn't it? Having something you can touch and hold." "It really does," William agreed. "That's why what you did was so important. You helped us all remember that some things are worth more than money, even when we're trying to raise money for good causes." The conversation with her father reinforced Charlotte's confidence in her decision to speak up. She realized that finding her voice hadn't been selfish or wrong. It had been necessary and even valuable to the whole family. A few days later, George approached Charlotte while she was doing her homework. "Hey, Charlotte, I wanted to tell you something." Charlotte looked up from her math problems. "What?" "You were really brave at breakfast that day," George said somewhat awkwardly. He wasn't always great at expressing emotions, but he wanted his sister to know he admired what she had done. "Thanks, George." Charlotte replied, surprised by the compliment. Your idea about the sponsored run was really good too. Mum says they're actually going to organize one, George told her excitedly. A royal family fun run where people can pay to run alongside us in the park. They think it'll raise loads of money. Charlotte's face broke into a huge smile. That's amazing. See, we can help the children in so many ways without giving away our family memories. Even young Louis got involved in his own way. He drew a picture of the watch surrounded by hearts and presented it to Charlotte one morning at breakfast. This is for you, he announced proudly. So you remember to be brave like you were. Charlotte hugged her little brother, touched by his gesture. She carefully kept the drawing in her room, another memory to treasure alongside the watch itself. As the charity gala approached, excitement built throughout the household. The new auction format was generating even more interest than anticipated. News outlets picked up the story about the royal experiences being offered, and early pledges were already coming in from potential bidders. Catherine shared updates with Charlotte, making sure her daughter understood the positive impact of the changes. We're already projected to exceed our original fundraising goal by 30%, Catherine told her. And that's largely because we rethought our approach. Charlotte felt proud to have played a part in the success, but she also felt humbled. She hadn't set out to revolutionize the charity event. She had simply wanted to preserve a connection to someone she loved. The fact that it had led to even better outcomes for the Children's Hospital was an unexpected bonus. The night of the charity gala arrived with all the sparkle and elegance expected of a royal event. Charlotte wore a beautiful dress in her signature blue color, her hair styled in soft curls. But the most special part of her outfit was the watch, which Catherine had arranged to be temporarily modified with a delicate chain, so Charlotte could wear it as a necklace for the evening. Are you sure I can wear it? Charlotte had asked when her mother presented the idea. Absolutely, Catherine confirmed. Tonight is about celebrating family, charity, and the courage to speak up for what matters. You represent all of those things, and the watch should be with you. As they arrived at the venue, Charlotte felt the weight of the watch against her chest, a comforting reminder of her great-grandmother's presence. The grand ballroom was decorated with thousands of flowers, and elegantly dressed guests mingled while soft music played in the background. Many guests approached the family throughout the evening, and several commented on Charlotte's unique necklace. Each time, Catherine would explain that it had belonged to Queen Elizabeth and that Charlotte had played an important role in ensuring it remained in the family while still supporting the charity's goals. The story of Charlotte speaking up resonated with many of the attendees. Parents told her how impressed they were by her maturity. Business leaders mentioned the importance of knowing when to question plans and suggest alternatives. The young princess found herself at the center of admiring attention, though she handled it with humble grace. When the auction portion of the evening began, Charlotte sat between her parents watching with nervous excitement. The diamond and sapphire brooch that Mrs. Hartley had suggested sold for an impressive £120,000, far exceeding its estimated value. The ceremonial medals attracted spirited bidding from collectors around the world who were participating virtually. But the real excitement came when the royal experiences were auctioned. The private tea experience that Mrs. Hartley had suggested sparked a bidding war that lasted several minutes, finally selling for an astounding £200,000 to a businessman who wanted to give his elderly mother the experience of a lifetime. Charlotte watched in amazement as the numbers climbed higher and higher. She had never imagined that an afternoon tea could be worth so much money. The winning bidder would get to have tea with Catherine at Kensington Palace, along with a private tour of some usually restricted areas. George leaned over and whispered to Charlotte, "Can you believe this? We're going to raise so much more money than we thought." As the evening progressed, the final fundraising total was announced. The gala had raised over £800,000, far exceeding the original goal of £500,000. The extra funds would allow the hospital not only to complete the new children's wing, but also to purchase additional medical equipment and fund research programs. The event chairman gave a speech, thanking everyone for their generosity. Then he did something unexpected. He asked Charlotte to join him on stage. Charlotte looked at her parents in surprise and slight panic. Catherine gave her an encouraging nod while William squeezed her hand supportively. Taking a deep breath, Charlotte stood and made her way to the stage. very aware of the hundreds of eyes watching her. "Ladies and gentlemen," the chairman began, "tonight's success story has an unlikely hero. Princess Charlotte, at just 9 years old, reminded her family and all of us about something crucial. She showed us that honoring our past and serving our future don't have to be in conflict. Her courage to speak up led to a complete reimagining of this event, and the results speak for themselves." The audience applauded warmly, and Charlotte felt her cheeks flush. She hadn't expected this public recognition. The chairman continued, "Princess Charlotte, would you like to say a few words?" Charlotte hadn't prepared a speech, but as she looked out at the audience, words came naturally to her. "Thank you all for being so generous tonight. My great-grandmother always said that true nobility comes from serving others, but she also taught me that family and memories are precious gifts we should protect. I'm happy we found a way to do both." She touched the watch hanging around her neck. "This watch reminds me of her every day. It reminds me to be brave, to be kind, and to speak up when something is important. I'm grateful we could keep it in our family and still help so many children who need medical care." The applause that followed was thunderous. Many people in the audience were visibly moved by the young princess's sincere words. Charlotte returned to her seat, feeling both relieved and proud that she had managed to express herself clearly. Later in the evening, the hospital's chief administrator approached the family. "Your Royal Highnesses, Princess Charlotte," he began warmly. "On behalf of everyone at the hospital, thank you. The funds raised tonight will change countless young lives. Children will receive treatment they might not have otherwise accessed." He looked specifically at Charlotte. "And Princess Charlotte, I want you to know that what you did took remarkable courage. You showed that even young voices matter when they speak up for what's right. The children we serve will benefit not just from tonight's donations, but from the example you've set about balancing compassion with wisdom." Charlotte felt tears forming in her eyes, but they were happy tears. She had never imagined that her simple desire to keep her great-grandmother's watch would lead to such a meaningful outcome. As the family rode home that night, Charlotte was quiet, processing everything that had happened. The watch, now back on her mother's wrist for safekeeping, had been at the center of a story that taught Charlotte valuable lessons about courage, compromise, and the power of speaking your truth. "Tired, darling?" Catherine asked, noticing Charlotte's reflective mood. "A little," Charlotte admitted, "but mostly I'm just thinking about everything that happened." William smiled at his daughter in the rearview mirror. "You should be very proud of yourself, Charlotte. You handled a complicated situation with real maturity." Several weeks after the gala, life at Kensington Palace had returned to its normal rhythm of school, activities, and family time. But something had fundamentally changed in how the family approached decisions and conversations. Charlotte's brave moment at the breakfast table had created a lasting impact that went far beyond saving one antique watch. Catherine had arranged for the watch to be properly cleaned and restored by the royal jewelers. When it was returned, she invited Charlotte to her private sitting room for a special conversation. The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows, creating warm patches of light on the carpet. "Come sit with me, darling," Catherine said, patting the cushion beside her on the sofa. Charlotte settled in close to her mother, curious about this private moment together. Catherine held out a small velvet box. "The jewelers have finished their work on Great Granny's watch, but before we put it back in the collection, I wanted to talk to you about something important." Charlotte watched as her mother opened the box, revealing the watch gleaming beautifully after its careful restoration. The gold case shone brighter than Charlotte remembered, and the delicate hands seemed to dance in the sunlight. "Charlotte, you showed tremendous courage by speaking up about this watch," Catherine began. "You taught all of us a valuable lesson about listening to our hearts and having difficult conversations. Because of that, your father and I have made a decision." Charlotte looked up at her mother with curious eyes, wondering what was coming next. "This watch has been passed down through generations of our family," Catherine continued. "It belonged to your great-grandmother, and before that to other remarkable women in the royal family. Each person who wore it added their own story to its history." Catherine took the watch from its box and held it gently. "Your great-grandmother would have been so proud of you for what you did. You showed wisdom, compassion, and strength of character. Those are the same qualities she valued most." Charlotte felt her heart beating faster, sensing that something significant was about to happen. "Your father and I believe that you should be the next keeper of this watch," Catherine said softly. "Not to own it exactly because it belongs to the whole family, but to be its guardian. to care for it, to preserve the memories it holds, and eventually to pass it on to the next generation with your own stories added to its history. Charlotte's eyes went wide with surprise. Really, me? But I'm still just a child. Catherine smiled warmly. You proved you're mature enough for this responsibility. Keeping this watch safe doesn't mean you have to wear it every day or even touch it constantly. It means understanding its importance and ensuring it stays protected and cherished. Tears of joy filled Charlotte's eyes as she carefully took the watch from her mother's hands. The weight of it felt different now, heavier with meaning and responsibility, but also comforting in its familiarity. Thank you, Mummy, Charlotte whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I promise I'll take good care of it. Catherine hugged her daughter close. I know you will. And whenever you look at it, remember that you have a voice that matters. Never be afraid to speak up for what you believe in, just like you did that morning at breakfast. That evening, the whole family gathered for a special dinner. William raised his glass in a toast with the children holding their juice glasses. To Charlotte, William said with pride in his voice, who reminded us that the most valuable things in life aren't always the ones with the biggest price tags. You showed us that preserving our past and building our future can happen together, with wisdom and heart. Everyone clinked their glasses together, and Charlotte felt surrounded by love and support. George gave her a genuine smile across the table, and even Louis seemed to understand something special was happening. Later that week, Charlotte received a letter that had been forwarded from the hospital. It was from a young patient named Emma, who was 7 years old and recovering from a serious surgery in the new children's wing that the gala had funded. Charlotte read the letter carefully. Emma wrote about how scared she had been before her operation, but how the beautiful new hospital wing with its bright colors and comfortable rooms had made her feel safer. She thanked Charlotte for helping to make the hospital a better place for children like her. The letter included a drawing Emma had made, showing Charlotte wearing a crown and holding a watch. At the bottom, in careful child's handwriting, it said, "Thank you for being brave and helping kids like me." Charlotte showed the letter to her parents, her eyes shining. This makes everything even more special. Emma got better because of what we all did together. William nodded thoughtfully. That's the real reward, Charlotte. Knowing that your actions made a genuine difference in someone's life. Emma is just one of many children who will benefit from the funds we raised. The hospital sent regular updates about the new wing's progress. Catherine shared these updates with Charlotte, who followed the construction and eventual opening with keen interest. When the wing officially opened 6 months later, Charlotte was invited to cut the ribbon alongside her parents. Standing in the bright, cheerful hallway of the new facility, surrounded by grateful families and medical staff, Charlotte understood the full circle of what had happened. Her love for her great-grandmother's watch had led to this moment, where sick children would receive better care in a more comfortable environment. As time passed, Charlotte developed a ritual with the watch. Once a week she would take it out, wind it carefully, and spend a few quiet moments remembering her great-grandmother. She started a journal where she wrote down memories and lessons she wanted to preserve, creating her own record of stories to pass down someday. Her brothers noticed the change in their sister. Charlotte carried herself with a quiet confidence that came from knowing she had found her voice and used it wisely. George started speaking up more in family discussions too, inspired by his sister's example. Even Louis, in his own energetic way, became better at expressing his feelings rather than keeping them bottled up. The watch incident became a touchstone moment in the family's history. Whenever difficult decisions arose, someone would inevitably say, "Remember when Charlotte spoke up about the watch?" It served as a reminder that every family member's perspective mattered, regardless of age. Years later, when Charlotte was older, she would look back on that breakfast morning as a turning point in her life. It was the moment she discovered that having courage didn't mean being fearless. It meant speaking your truth even when you were scared, trusting that your feelings were valid, and being willing to engage in difficult conversations. The antique watch continued to tick away, keeping time as it had for generations. But now it carried new meaning, new stories, and new lessons within its golden case. It had become more than a family heirloom. It was a symbol of the importance of speaking up, of balancing tradition with progress, and of finding solutions that honor both heart and duty. Charlotte kept her promise to care for the watch, and in doing so, she honored not just her great-grandmother's memory, but also the values that made her family strong. The watch reminded her daily that sometimes the smallest voices can create the biggest changes, and that love and courage passed down through generations are the most precious inheritances of all. On quiet afternoons, when Charlotte held the watch and listened to its steady tick, she could almost hear her great-grandmother's voice telling her the same thing she had said during those long-ago tea times. Be brave, be kind, and always speak your truth with love. And Charlotte knew, with absolute certainty, that she would carry those words forward, just as she carried the watch, protecting both for the generations yet to come.